In this tutorial we're going to start learning about virtual environment. Like I said in our previous topic, that if you are using an Android device, you don't have to suffer for all this, but if you are using Visual Studio Code, you have to know what is virtual environment and how to run your Python code. So in this video I'm going to explain virtual environment. If you are using a Linux or Windows operating system, you will learn how to work with virtual environment, and also at the end of this tutorial you will know what is virtual environment, how to run your Python code in Visual Studio Code. So before we start, I want you to understand this. I'm going to start with the theoretical aspect, then we move on to the practical aspect. Right now there is computer in front of me, so the moment I finish explaining the theory, you understand what is virtual environment, then we move on and see how you can be able to implement it and activate it in your code so that you can work with it. So look at it this way. They said if you look at environment, maybe you can think of something like a house. Someone can maybe sit with his own family and other stuff that he wanted to, like TV. He can watch movie with his phone, he can put charge, and so on and so forth. So we can look at that as what? As an environment. So what environment means in programming, or I say virtual environment means. So usually, like I said, you as a programmer, if you sit down and write your code in a computer, so you definitely need that computer to run your code. So in that case we need the middleman, which is interpreter, or I say the translator. So translator, I already explained that we have two types of translator: interpreter and compiler. So your code, or I said your program, whether a Python program, a C++, or whatever program you write, it will go through that compiler or interpreter. Then the code will be converted to 0 and 1. When it's converted to 0 and 1, then the computer can now be able to execute your code in CPU. When the CPU executes your code, then it will bring back the response so that you can see what your code has been done. Your code, is it work well, or you have error in your code? So if anything goes well, then you will see nothing, you will not see any error. So how does a virtual environment fit in here according to this explanation that I did? Here how the virtual environment fit in. When you write the code, you need that compiler, or I said interpreter, to make your program to convert your program into machine code. So in this case, you can be able to download this interpreter from internet. For example, you go to Python website, python.org, and you download it, you install it in your computer. Like those that have Windows, I know you go to Python official website and you download the Python, then you install it. So when you install it, that's the interpreter. But the interpreter is locked in globally in your computer, like any project can work with it. But sometimes that global stuff is not the right option, so you have to take all your stuff. For example, in your home, maybe there is public fridge. Everyone can go and put their yogurt, and they can go and take their yogurt and use it. So if you put your yogurt in public fridge in your home, everyone, there is probability that someone can come and just took your yogurt and go and drink it. But if you have your own personal fridge in your room, where you can put your own yogurt, so that no one can be able to access it unless you have a guarantee that you will come back and you still see it. So this is the difference between your normal installation globally and then virtual environment. So virtual environment is like you separate your interpreter, some of the frameworks that you're going to use. For example, maybe you are creating a website, maybe you're going to use plugs or request. So you just install all of those framework, or I say install all these applications separately in a virtual environment. So that virtual environment will act like a bag. It will act like a bag that will contain your private stuff, that you can only use that bag if you want to do something. So for example, let's say I create a virtual environment that I'm going to use for creating game. So I can call the virtual environment something like EMB game. So which framework are we using when creating game? We are using Pygame, we are using TK Inter and other stuff. So I install all these frameworks, what I say libraries, inside that virtual environment. So I put all of this library. This library, they're going to help me create the game. So I created this virtual environment. So all of this library will be inside this virtual environment, not globally in my computer, so that it can mess up my code. No, they are in a private bag. So the moment I'm going to use that bag, where I say I'm going to use this library to create game, instead for me to just go and still install another Pygame, I just have to call this virtual environment, or I said activate it. So the moment I activate it, then I can use all of this framework that is inside. So I hope you understand what is a virtual environment. Just look at it as a bag where you can put some of your stuff, and that bag is specific to some other stuff you're going to do. Maybe there is a bag when you go to work, there is a bag when you go to school, there is a bag when you go to for a maybe vacation. So all of this bag, what you have inside the bag is completely different from one another. The bag that you are going to school, it contain maybe your laptop, your textbooks, and so on. And then the bag you're going to go for a vacation, it's going to contain your clothes, your and so on, and some other stuff. So I hope you understand. So that's what is virtual environment. So how can we be able to install and work with this virtual environment? So for you to create that bag that you're going to put your Python interpreter inside and maybe some other frameworks, in Linux there is command we are going to use. So I'm going to teach you right now the command. First thing you're going to do, you're going to create the bag. When you create the bag, then you activate the bag. Activating the bag is like you are wearing it. So when you activate the bag, then the last step is for you to start putting stuff inside the bag. Put stuff. So you create the bag, which is creating the virtual environment, you activate it, and then you put some stuff inside. So now let's see how we're going to create the bag in our Visual Studio Code. So right now, as you can see, I am inside my Visual Studio Code. So how am I going to create this virtual environment? So for me to create this virtual environment, I'm going to, firstly, if you are in a Linux, so you maybe start by installing the apt, which is sudo apt. We'll say sudo apt install, then you set Python. You can see it here, Python 3, then you name the virtual environment. When you install it, then the next thing you're going to do is for you to now create the virtual environment. So how are you going to create the virtual environment? You just call it Python 3, then you see -m, then you say virtual environment. You are telling the Python, okay, I'm going to create virtual environment. Then the space you're going to put, then you put the name of your virtual environment. So let me just call it beginner, then underscore environment, beginner environment, or I say beginner virtual environment. So when I click enter, it's going to create this virtual environment for me. So as you can see now, it created the virtual environment. For those that are in Visual Studio Code, the first thing you're going to do, you come here, click on this terminal, then you click on new terminal, then it will pop you this off this terminal if you don't see this terminal in your Visual Studio Code. So now if we call this ls, this ls means list. It's telling the computer, okay, list all the folders that we are in the same directory in. So if I click this, you see it's listing all the folders. So if you look closely, you will find out I have a directory called beginner env, which is, this is my virtual environment. So I want to put all my framework, all my stuff that I'm going to use to maybe create a program called beginner env. So I can, before I start putting stuff inside this bag, which is inside this beginner env, before I start putting some stuff inside it, I have to activate it, just like wiring the bag. So how am I going to activate it? You will just say source, then you put the name of the environment, which is beginner. In my case is beginner underscore env, then slash, then you say bin slash activate. So by writing this line of code, source beginner, you say source, you want the source of all your programs to be in this virtual environment, and you want the virtual environment to be activated. So when I click enter, you will see now at the beginning here I have only mk at Kali, but right now I have beginner env and mk at Kali, which is telling me that whatever I install, whatever I did, I'm inside this virtual environment. So now when you did that, then you can start by saying okay, pick install Python, whatever you wanted to install. So by doing this, now you can be able to run your Python program very smoothly without having any issue. I hope I make this clear. So for those that are using Windows, how are you going to do that? Well, it's very simple. The first thing you're going to do, you just go to CMD, which is command line interface, or I say command prompt. When you go to CMD, then you write Python space dash bnb, which is virtual environment, and then my environment, maybe whatever the name you put for your virtual environment. Then the second thing you're going to do after you create the virtual environment, then you activate the virtual environment. So how do you going to activate the virtual environment in Windows? You start by calling the name of the virtual environment, then /script/activate. This is how you're going to activate it. So for those that are using Windows. So I hope now you understand what is virtual environment. Maybe now I'm not going to use it, but you will see the differences when we start creating program. I'm going to run a program without a virtual environment. You're going to see how it's going to show me arrow and other stuff. I'm going to run a program with virtual environment. So virtual environment is the environment where you're going to install all of the programs or all the application that's going to help your program works. I hope I make this clear. So if you have any other question, you can ask in the comment section below, and see you in our next tutorial, which is going to start by learning some command line interface.